the natural resources to make what we are consuming. And that means every year, actually. And that means that every person in the planet can use 12 tons of that every year. From all this amount, we are only able to recycle less than 10% of that. So assuming going forward with this speed, basically coming people out of poverty, getting more consumer to the picture, and with the increasing world population, we're gonna need 2 planets to kind of be sufficient for our needs going forward. On the other hand, the supply part of it, we actually get and use whatever was easy to get and use already. So going forward, to be efficient and actually get access to the cost-efficient material is not going to be easy. And also making sure that we are going to meet all the environmental challenges. So what we have to do here is actually to find more responsible and sustainable model to make things and also to consume them. And additive manufacturing can be one thing for that.
Anita, your mic is open. Go ahead. Finish your sentence, Pantea, sorry.
No, I was just talking about that we need actually more responsible and sustainable model for both our consumption and also for the way that we are making products. And additive manufacturing can be an enabler for this purpose.
It's clearly a huge problem, sustainability, and I think at least for me, I considered myself quite informed, but I was not aware that manufacturing is responsible for 31% of emissions, which is much more than travel, right? If I'm not
actually
mistaken.
Much more than anything else that has the heat. Like if you comparing it with, for example, the electricity pollution, that's 27%. If you are comparing it to the heating, that's just 7%. And fun fact is actually, last year we were all in pandemic, so we shut down all the activity that we were doing, aviation and transportation, everything. And the only thing that happened was that this number comes down just 5%. So it actually shows that how manufacturing and how pollution manufacturing is matter for the world and the world pollution.
All the more important to manufacture responsibly and sustainably, and we'll get to that. But now that we've seen the numbers, it's clear that we need to encourage more sustainable behavior, and part of the way that the world encourages behavior is through regulation. So, Alessandra, I hope you can tell us a little bit about regulation in general, and maybe more specifically about the right to repair, which was recently enacted in the EU, and which I think is really a groundbreaking piece of legislation in the world. There are other small right to repair initiatives, but they're very contained, and this one is actually quite broad. Please tell us a little bit about how the regulator views these things, how it encourages, and specifically on right of repair.
Thank you for your question. Yes, indeed, climate change is at the center of the European Commission agenda. And as you may imagine, this is a whole new momentum for supporting the industry to this transition. And as Pantea was saying, since manufacturing represents the 31% of emissions, the action of the Commission are really addressing the transition of the industry. And as you may imagine, there are a lot of going on at the European level. So I will mention you maybe those main regulations that are currently being discussed and the ones that may be more interesting also for the topic of today. So the three main instruments that I would like to mention today are the revised industrial strategy that has been recently issued 2 weeks ago, I think. And then we have, of course, the European Green Deal. And I will also mention the right to repair and other related initiatives. So talking about the revised industrial strategy, this document outlines, let's say, the future of the European industrial ecosystem. And the document sets out, in fact, the pathway to enable the EU industry to lead the so-called twin green and digital transitions to become more competitive and most of all to become resilient to external shocks. This is a kind of mantra that all people working with EU policies have learned and probably dream at night, but absolutely
This is
focus.
because of COVID, right?
Yeah,
That's how we got to the shocking supply chain shocks.
exactly. And the revised industrial strategy have been recently updated indeed to include all the, let's say, lessons learned from the crisis. And I will get back to it later, maybe, since I have a concrete example on resilience and supply chains.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also very important to mention the European Green Deal, because it's the document that sets this ambitious goal that the European Union has set, which is reducing the emission of 55% by 2030 and becoming climate neutral by 2050. So it's indeed a big transformation. And to enable that, the European Commission issued this Circular Economy Action Plan to set all the actions that are needed to reach this climate neutrality by 2050. And part of this action plan, there are these interesting initiatives that are, one is the Sustainable Products Policy Initiative, which is actually a key and also a big part of this Circular Economy Action Plan. This initiative basically will bring a lot of changes in product design, production processes, as well as consumers' rights. And specifically, it will try to regulate a couple of sustainability aspects of the product, such as durability, reusability, reparability, recycled content in products, remanufacturing, high-quality recycling, and restrictions to single-use and premature obsolescence. So this is, let's say, where we can talk about right to repair, because let's say that consumers should have this right to repair the good they buy. So it will be probably made mandatory at certain point. And this means that manufacturers should be required to make spare parts for those products, of course, available and easily accessible to consumers. So this legislation indeed has arisen due to some concerns that goods aren't lasting as long as they should, and also because there are some assumptions that maybe some manufacturers are deliberately creating products with a short lifespan. So
And
here
so
comes the
for the
need.
repair, it's a decade, right? It's 10 years that you need to be able to repair these products. So this is quite a long time. It's not just longer. For I don't know, a blender or a coffee machine, today I think there are spare parts only for about 2 years, if at all.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So all those aspects will become probably mandatory, both for the consumer and also for the producer. So it's very important to understand what we are talking about. And it's very important actually to participate, if you would like to this open consultation that the Commission has currently ongoing. There is this open consultation on this initiative, the Sustainable Products Policy Initiative, and all stakeholders can give, their inputs and insights on what could be the most suitable policy framework for that. So in case your company, or even if you are academic or anyway an expert in additive manufacturing, I really encourage you to participate in these open consultations. It's just a questionnaire, but you can really give your important point of view. So I
Alessandra,
can
maybe
put
in
the
the
link.
chat you can provide a link for
Absolutely.
those that want to participate, because it's probably very important to hear from different stakeholders in the ecosystem so that the policy can take into account everyone's concerns but also interests, because if somebody isn't in there, it just won't work. It'll be very difficult to enforce. And I think that more specifically, with COVID and everything that happened, you kind of touched on it, we really saw the advantage of digital supply chains that were robust to all of these disruptions. Before, the disruptions were, Brexit, that happens once in decades, and, trade wars, and people thought that it wouldn't happen again. But COVID made it clear that this is going to happen again and again. And the one thing we don't know what kind of disruption or, ship stuck in the Suez Canal is going to happen, but we know that there will be disruptions. Nobody thinks there will not be disruptions anymore, and AM is amazing that way. And I think that the regulation you mentioned really pushes even more in that direction to move over to additive. So what are the implications of the right to repair and the ability of additive to go to digital inventory and digital supply chains? Maybe we'll start by talking about design-wise. Marie, would you like to start? I'll show your slide.
Yes, of course. I think if we look at different kind of things that we can design, so design for additive, and maybe Lee, you can just show the whole slide, because I think there is some iteration in it. Perfect. So now everyone has it in a whole. So we have, of course, a lot of parts that customers of ours and applications that customers of ours are working on, and we support here. Of course, I think this one is showcasing very well also the sustainable effect, what also Pantea was referring to already. So we see here that you can not only looking at the parts that you normally manufacture traditionally, you need 10 parts, so you can reduce that to 1 with additive. But you, of course, can also make sure that it's lighter. So the lightweight component is very important here, about 4 kilograms per aircraft. And this is reducing in the end, then, of course, a lot of CO2 per plane, because you also need to imagine that you have 16 of these in an Airbus A350 in that case. So we see, of course, that here we can gain some fuel cost reduction potential for our customers with this technology and with designing for AM. And actually, I also want to showcase just 2 different other examples, because if you look at these are, I think we all are very aware what that is now since COVID, kind of. These are like nasal swabs you kind of need to use to get testing. And what we imagine, and I think Lee and also Alessandra, you were emphasizing this topic of digital supply chain, but also on-demand production, which in the end is, of course, a result. What you can realize with that is that we saw that we just had a huge shortage on that, because we, of course, never needed it. And then with all the fragility we had in the supply chains with our global network, it was really possible with AM to produce a lot, and we're in overall we're in millions here. A lot of these nasal swabs are now on demand as we needed it, and I think that's really important to also to emphasize, and also to just showcase another kind of example is here an insole. What you can have customized for yourself. Well, what we actually developed together with a customer in the US in the footwear space. So where you can really see that not 2 feet are alike, so they look differently. Actually, I don't know if you probably see.
Yeah,
so they have a little bit different patterns if you look at it carefully. And so I think that's also something where we can just store this kind of data in a digital twin, and we can make sure to print it when we need it and to readjust once our feet are developing, and of course making
also,
sure that
I think
in the end.
these are examples of changes in design. The swabs, I think, were changed a little bit, but these insoles are very different from traditional insoles, right?
They are, and actually what we do that together with a company which was manufacturing traditionally the insoles, but they really felt that with our technology and with 3D printing, they can just realize a much better fit for their patients. and to customize it even much more, and especially realize that you don't have to have the same two feet, and it's much easier to do it, like produce it at like lot size 1, as we always discuss. So every part can be different. And so customization, of course, product innovation, iteration becomes much faster with that technology. And so I just wanted to show some on polymer, but also on metal. Maybe Valeria also has some examples on metal still, I think.
Yes.
And we also see that the whole consumer goods industry is kind of revolutionized. And I think what is important here is that also when we look at mass production, I think we will get to the point of mass customization. And I think that will be also very interesting when we look at responsible practices and sustainability.
Mm-hmm. And also when we talk about, this digital inventory, we have to remember that saves waste. Because before you would buy 2 pairs of insoles and throw away one to get the pair that you needed for your different feet. And now you can print it, you're really reducing waste. And the customization is especially a way to reduce a lot of waste that happens in the iterations to get to the thing that that works for you. So this is something, but if you put this together with the right to repair, I think the example that you gave from Airbus is very interesting. First of all, because it's different, it's a redesign. It didn't just take the part and put it, but actually it's a whole assembly, right? And this is,
of course,
you can't do this with other technologies. Additive allows this, but nobody else. So let's maybe move it really to the metal and to Valeria and some of your examples, Valeria. Let me show your slide for a sec.
Yes, thank you. Thank you also to Marie to have introduced this important topic. So the design, the new mentality used for the design. This is really something that has completely changed the life of my designers in the company. And I have this nice case to tell you. Was last year, almost in the COVID period, we had produced a new valve, a new hydraulic component, and as usual, after the production, we have to test the valve. But at the time, we didn't have the right test bench, so the correct machine to test this new valve. So at the beginning, my engineers start to think to make a new component, and you can see on the top of your right, sorry, your left, exactly the conventional machined mechanical part to refurbish an existing test bench that you can see below. Exactly. So we had this test bench that needed some changes, some modification to be used for the new valve, new product. But thanks to the contamination between the additive manufacturing designers and the conventional people working in hydraulics department, they had the idea to create a 3D printed component exactly fitting our needs. So we need to test this valve. So you can see exactly the design by additive manufacturing, and we were able to save a lot of weight compared to the conventional part that was only, in the mind, was never produced. Thanks to topology optimization, of course, we had the less material as we needed in this part. And then we produced the two components that you can see on the bottom, exactly. And the combination of these two components, very simple, component or smaller component installed in an existing test bench, we were able to test the new production faster than the manual testing, and also safer, because the operator that make this test were using the test bench in a safer way. So again, it's a very good example of a combination of design and refurbishing of existing machine. Thanks to the fact that we have a new idea, new possibility with additive manufacturing to make in a very fast way the solution. And in our case, we do internally in a very, homemade department.
And essentially, this is a way to retrofit an existing machine, and yes, it's not exactly repair, but it's reuse it for another purpose, rather than do something much larger and more disruptive, and obviously would create more waste. And I think that also it's a great example of tooling. And, tooling is used throughout the manufacturing process as well. But the other thing that we touched about here with the right of repair is more on digital supply chains and digital inventory. And I think, Marie, you mentioned COVID. I think, again, COVID was a wake-up call for everyone in so many respects, but also in this respect. And Alessandra, I was wondering if you could tell us how it affected the regulatory side of things and how the regulator views digital supply chains and what you're doing in order to promote them, because we've seen the flexibility that they afford.
Absolutely, yes. Let's say that the COVID crisis has been a wake-up call for the regulator entities. So, of course, the digitalization of the supply chain is key if we want to achieve all the ambitious goals that are set in the different documents. And just to make you even a concrete example, one of the things that is foreseen in this sustainable directive is the digital passport of the product. So how can we create a digital passport for a product if we don't have the digitalization of the supply chain? Because this passport at the end will be a repository of all the data collected through the supply chain, and that will give information to the customers and also to the producer about the level of sustainability, the material that have been used, the recycled components. So it's very, very important. And when talking about resilience, of course, during this COVID outbreak, the world consumption of goods plumped, really. We are just seeing, actually, we just had this morning a meeting on economic data, and fortunately, it's somehow revamping a bit, fortunately, but there was a real shock, especially in the healthcare supply chains. So what the Commission did was to come to us basically and asked us to launch a call to action, where we basically tried to contact all the AM facilities in Europe and also in the US and other countries